Hello YouTube. Legends about tall, bearded, light-eyed people still circulate among the Khanty, the inhabitants of Western Siberia. These myths tell us that the eastern bank of the Yenisei River was inhabited by white, meaning Caucasian race, giants from ancient times. They built large stone cities and they hunted. Their deer were as tall as elk. So local people often traded animals with them for breeding. The Khanty said that the giants went south, but left mystical guards in the place of residences. Fear of this watchman always prevented the Khanty from crossing the mighty Yenisei. They were especially afraid of the dark rocks of the Putoran plateau. The Khanty elders were sure that this was where the white giants lived. As for the Putoran, see my video link that I posted in description to this video. I think you'll find it more than interesting. It is there, under the screes and mud flows, that you can still find the walls of ancient cities made of stones and rocks. Exactly the same legends exist among the Nenets people living in Taimyr and among the Aank people living in the valleys of the Angara and the lower Tunguska rivers. And if you watch my videos about Eurasia, Siberia especially, and the Tunguska event, you will recognize these geographical names. Well, Russian anthropologist Georgy Sidorov, who collected these myths, believes that nomadic people adopted them from the indigenous population of Siberia when they arrived in their lands many centuries ago. The existence of ancient cities in Siberia is confirmed by the story of the Aank, whose last name was Chapogir, who in 1978 hunted in the upper reaches of the Vivi River, which originates from the lake of the same name in the south of the Putoran Mountains. He told a scientist who questioned him that a ram he shot in the mountains fell into a ravine. The hunter went down after the animal, and then the sun illuminated the ravine. Chapogir raised his head, and behind the bushes, covering the steep mountainside, he observed the sunlit stone wall of an ancient city. He remembered that the lower blocks of the wall were large, built with interlocking masonry. Smaller stones were placed higher up. The wall was hidden from above by a layer of soil, and along the edges by stone scree, the kurum. By the way, scree is a collection of broken rock fragments at the base of a cliff or other steep rocky mass that has accumulated through periodic rockfall. It was visible only from the bottom of the ravine through which a small stream flowed. The length of the visible section of the wall was 70 steps. The Aank returned home convinced that he had found the place where the city of heroes stood thousands of years ago. One may consider all this to be nonsense, but the same Nenets had a legend about another mythical people whom they called Sikhirtia. Those people were short, fair-haired, they rode dogs, lived underground, and left their homes only at night. Scientists, of course, shrugged it off. They looked too much like fairy tale gnomes. But in 2019, Russian archaeologists found a site in Makarova Bay on which they proved that the Sikhirtia really lived underground inside the hills. Archaeologists have found dwellings, decorated mammoth tusks, and a sanctuary where paws and heads of bears and other large animals were sacrificed to the gods. By the way, the Nenets adopted the custom of the appeasing spirits in this way from the Sikhirtia indigenous people. I have a number of videos about this mysterious and vanished Sikhirtia, as well as the Chud people of Eurasia. It's my continuous research. Look in the playlist. Now let's go to Yakutia. I don't need to introduce it to you. You can look at my playlist about this really frozen and wonderful place. In many ways, there's so many paranormal phenomena. Well, there are runways lined with perfectly straight lines. Surprisingly, something similar, resembling an ancient airfield, a cosmodrome like in Nazca, was discovered back in the Soviet time in the vast expanses of Siberia. To be more precise, in the area of the Jjur Ridge in Yakutia. Here's what the Russian traveler and researcher of the culture of the people of the northeast of Siberia, Tagin, here's what he wrote about this find in his book, The Guardian of the North. I have already said that almost most people are at least aware of the huge geoglyphs and smooth multi-meter strips found in South America. If you look at them from a bird's eye view, it becomes clear the strips of artificial origin and most likely are runways. For many decades, researchers have been arguing about their purpose and asking the question into the void: who created them, what kind of aircraft could land on them and take off from them. Adherents of the theory of paleo contact, or ancient astronauts, ancient aliens, with foam at the mouth, claim that these strips are the preserved ground infrastructure of ancient cosmodrome, spaceport, which was built for their ships by aliens from outer space. Well, then there is Yakutia. Georgy Tagin, who is also an ethnographer, wrote down about the runways of Yakutia in his book. And he mentioned that the father of his friend named Pavel Petrovich worked in Yakutia for many years, often flew an aircraft along the route Ust-Maya Alayun, and himself told the author about what he observed. Both settlements are located in the southwest of Yakutia and are 63 kilometers apart. And each time, under the wing of the aircraft, he observed a strange deformation of the terrain in the area of the spurs of the Jjur Ridge. For a while, he didn't think about what he was seeing, but one day in the summer of 1978, he had to fly a little further to the northeast. The aircraft was flying at the altitude of 800 to 1,000 meters, and after 45 minutes, Pavel Petrovich saw huge whitish strips cleared of stones. These were 3 strips, one long and 2 short, 30 to 40 meters wide. They intersected at a point where there was a small round lake. A long strip ran across the terrain very smoothly. It climbed the mountainside, made its way through the rocks, came onto the ridge, followed it for about 400 meters, capturing the mountain from slope to slope, and it disappeared into the haze. Only many years later did the man realize that what he saw was very similar to the runways in the Nazca Desert. He never found any other explanation. No topographers or engineers or topographers would build such huge structures among the wild mountains terrain. And the lake could be a crater from the ancient nuclear explosion. That's what the scientists decided. Some of them, soon in another video, I'll tell you of such lakes in Eurasia. There are quite a few. Now let's move on to Kolyma. Mysterious megaliths bearing obvious traces of ancient processing are found throughout Kolyma. Kolyma is a historical region in the Russian Far East that includes the basin of the Kolyma River and the northern shores of the Sea of Okhotsk, as well as the Kolyma Mountains. It is bounded to the north by the East Siberian Sea and the Arctic Ocean, and by the Sea of Okhotsk to the south. The Kolyma Krai region was never formally defined, and over time it was split among various administrative units. As of 2023, it consisted roughly of the Magadan Oblast near eastern areas of Yakutia and the Belibinsky district of Chukotka Autonomous Okrug. Many concentration camps of the socialist motherland, with tens of thousands of political prisoners, were located in that freezing hell, and many of them perished, if not most. My father saw some in the 1950s, on his way to the army unit. The most famous of the megaliths were found 30 kilometers from Magadan. They resemble the megaliths of the Urals, Shoria and Ergaki in the Krasnoyarsk territory. They are made of huge stone blocks and have bowls at the top, depressions of various shapes and sizes, as if burned into the stone by some ancient weapon, like modified sulfur, which destroyed the ancient cities of Sodom and Gomorrah in Israel. Local researchers find it surprising that the remnants, as official science calls them, are located in a straight line running from southwest to northeast, as if pointing towards the Bering Strait. Who knows, maybe what we're looking at is actually the remains of an ancient wall, where the local population used to fence themselves from the flow of people migrating to America, or on the contrary, were these ancient cities founded on the ancient road to America? Now, the Koryak people living in the Taiganos Peninsula, between the Magadan region and the Kamchatka territory, and I told you quite a lot about that somewhat strange land, have preserved legends about the ancient flying people. Allegedly, they lived on the tops of the hills, built cities there, and came down only for trade. They knew how to process stone and iron, and in ancient times, the Koryaks exchanged most of the iron tips of spears and darts from the flying people. However, the Koryaks do not know where these people disappeared to. Perhaps they flew away, for example, to India, where their aircraft, according to legends, were called Vimanas. I did quite a lot of research about ancient India and its outposts in Siberia and the Far East. In general, the story about people living on the top of the mountains evokes a strong association with the mountain towns of ancient Peru, doesn't it? Why did people build such cities high in the mountains? Perhaps to shelter from floods, because permafrost came from somewhere in the vastness of Siberia, piercing the thickness of the soil for hundreds of meters. From the point of view of the continuity of customs among the local people, giants of Siberia, the recent discovery of archaeologists at the Avdiivskaya site near Russian city of Kursk is interesting. Scientists estimate the age of the site at 22,000 years. Imagine that. Among the figurines, bracelets, and tips, an object was found that scientists called a spatula with a pommel. The spatula was carved from a mammoth rib, and on the pommel there was depicted a mythical creature, half woman, half animal, with 4 eyes. Archaeologists decided that this could be the progenitor of the demon which the Sumerians called Uredimu, and it had the head of the lion and the body of a woman. The purpose of the spatulas was utilitarian and sacred. They were used to remove snow from clothes when entering a home, and perhaps at the same time scaring away evil spirits. Imagine, but 6,500 kilometers from Kursk in Chukotka, and I told you a lot about that very interesting land, 22,000 years later, the Chukchi had their own Urudimu, which were similar to the mythical creatures of the ancient inhabitants of the Kursk region. They were called Tivijgin. These spirits guarded the entrance of the Yaranga, meaning the home, the dwelling where they lived, local people. They were united in 2 faces and had 4 eyes. The Chukchi also called Tivijgin a spatula made from split deer antler, which they used in the same way as the inhabitants of the Avdiivskaya site. They knocked the snow out of their clothing before going inside the Yaranga. Each Chukchi had their own Tivijgin, and it was called having faces, and was born in the belt On the pommel, a human or animal head was depicted. At night, Tagin was left at the entrance as a guard. If a tradition can be preserved for 22,000 years and passed from people to people, then the legends about the white gods and giants or flying people can all the more be true. After all, thousands of kilometers of Russian territories have still not been explored by archaeologists, and some places will never be studied. Scientists are hampered by inaccessibility, permafrost, mosquitoes, and very bad climate. But still, I really want to believe that someday they will actually find the cities of the ancient light-eyed giants in Siberia and the underground kingdoms of the Yakutia and the Jjur people in the Urals, in the Russian north, in the Arctic. Look, Schliemann found Troy after all. Well, this is what I wanted to let you know today. You can find many more videos of mine about Siberia. And if you like my research and you can support it, please do so through the links listed in the description to this video. Please like my video, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you for your support.